Okay, you're good.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to share my screen. So welcome to the BOMA Jacksonville Speaker Series. My name is Melanie Bellinger. I am the Facilities Manager at Wounded Warrior Project, and I'm also the current president of BOMA Jacksonville. I hope you all are having a great week so far and enjoying this beautiful Florida weather. I know I am. I feel like we're past winter, hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm so glad you all could join us today for what is going to be a very informative panel about the current state of advocacy on a federal and state level. So as an FYI, Rick said we are recording this Zoominar, and please be sure you're on mute if you are not a panelist. So first off, as always, we want to thank our corporate partners, because without you, these events would not be possible. Our platinum partner, ServPro, John Strachan. Our other platinum partner is A1 Orange with Lindsay Nutter. We have our other platinum partner, Anthony Genti with Cosgrove. And finally, our newest platinum partner, Commercial Roofing and Waterproofing, and their representative is Jackie Brown. So as I give you some updates here, our next event is April 1st. Our education committee is planning the next one to be roofing issues and structural engineering. So this is a very important topic, especially with the storms and the weather we have here in Florida. So please join us for this event, invite your engineers, and learn how to protect and repair one of the most important assets to your building, the roof. We also have the Southern Region Conference. It is coming up very quickly, April 13th through the 15th. And so please join us for that as well, and learn more about what's going on in commercial real estate. Bring your team. It's virtual, so you can do, the event together with your team and, take advantage of being in BOMA. Oops, I did not need to do that. Sorry, guys. I accidentally clicked your link, Rick.
At least it works.
Yep, it did work. All right, hold on here. All right, so we still have masks available to purchase in support of BOMA Political Action Committee. So please reach out to Rick. You can also go onto our website to purchase those, and that helps support these legislative initiatives that Don is going to be talking to you about today. So we have our next coffee talk coming up. We've had some really good topics of late, and so I really hope you can join us on March 26th. The next topic we're going to do is a show and tell of something you've made by hand. So get your creative juices flowing and show us your best craft and or handiwork. So looking forward to seeing what people will come up with. I know we already have some members that have some pretty creative things. All right, so now it is time for our speaker series, and we are honored to have Don Davis of BOMA International and Chris Kina from Advisors Real Estate Group. Our original speaker, Lee Moffitt, is unable to attend due to a fall, and he hurt his back, so he's at the doctor's. So we're sending prayers to him for a speedy recovery. Thank you, Chris, for being able to join us at the last minute. We definitely appreciate it. There will be a question and answer portion at the end, so save your questions, or you can add them to the chat box and we can review those. So I'm going to go over the bios for everyone on the panel today. Don Davis is a licensed attorney with over 20 years of experience providing executive leadership in government relations and regulatory and compliance programs with an emphasis on energy and environment issues relating to the built environment. During his career, he has advocated for numerous legislative proposals at both the state and federal level, testifying to various agencies and in over 30 state legislatures on an array of policy issues. Don is a graduate of Georgetown University, Johns Hopkins University, and American University, and Washington College of Law. He is a member of the Maryland Bar and the Bar of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. Chris Kina formed Advisors Real Estate Group, which is a dedicated, experienced commercial real estate management firm. In this position, Mr. Kina is responsible for the management of the over 800,000 square feet of office, retail, industrial, and parking garage space in North Florida. Mr. Kino has over 40 years of experience in facilities, property, and construction management, design, and development, all of which provide valuable assistance to real estate owners as well as tenants. Chris has been a member of BOMA Tallahassee since 1998 and has served as president in 96, 2000, 2005, and 2006. He has also been a co-chair of BOMA Florida's Government Affairs Committee from 2004 to 2010. So now I'm going to turn it over to Don to start the panel, and he also has some slides he's going to share with you. Don?
Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you for the nice introduction, and I'm hoping that my slideshow is going to work, right? Let's see. Not exactly sure how this is working. Huh, okay, so of course it worked during rehearsal and now I can't get it to work exactly right, but PowerPoint. Start.
Don, if you go back to the beginning and start from beginning.
Yeah.
There you go. Now start again. And go up to your slideshow and it'll, there you go. Click on that one, double click. Should start the show. Yep, go up to slideshow at the very top.
Yeah, that's I'm not getting slideshow.
Do you see it on the top of just below the BOMA Jacksonville slides? Right there.
It says I'm screen sharing and it says stop the share. That's what I'm getting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right.
Hold on. Let me see if I can get some. How's that?
There you go. Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. And the technical assistant just showed up. I can't believe, after that explanation and all those years in school, and I can't run a PowerPoint, right? So anyway, thank you everybody very much for having me come and speak to you today. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we were able to accomplish during the last year, and then kind of switch and take a look at some of the things that we're trying to do in the upcoming year. And then we'll look at some state issues and resources and talk a little bit about our PAC. So to start on our updates for federal issues, we really were able to be quite successful in getting a couple of things done last year that we had been working at for years. The first is the Qualified Improvement Property Depreciation Act, QIP. This was included in the COVID bill that was passed over the Christmas holiday. But I think as many of you recall, what happened was during the tax bill that the Trump administration had put forward in 2017, there was an error in depreciation change, and it basically moved back leasehold improvements to the 39-year depreciation schedule for any kind of improvement. So, Congress had claimed that that was done in error, but the problem with Congress when they make an error, if it's the law, it's the law. So it has now taken 3 years to try to get that corrected. So the great news is that that has been changed back to basically to 10 years for most leasehold improvements, but what they're now calling qualified improvement property. I think they changed that stuff up just to confuse us. But there are a few variations where you may have a 13 or 15 year, but for the most part, that has been corrected. So we're quite pleased with that having been restored to the previous depreciation schedule. The other major thing that was included was the 179D. And I think many of you are familiar with this, but basically what it is it's the energy efficiency tax deduction that's made available for energy improvements that are done to the building environment. So it's based on the current or relevant ASHRAE standards. So you would look back to say 90.1 that has just been passed. I think currently it's 2019. And if you were to go beyond that by 50%, then you're gonna get $1.80 tax deduction. So the problem that had been with this program Well, there's two major problems, but the first problem that had been done with this program is that it was never permanent. So it would expire every 2 or 4 years over the last 15 years that this legislation has been in effect. And so you would try to plan for that and say, well, we're going to pay for this deduction or this improvement by this deduction, and then you'd get to that tax year and it wouldn't be available. So it was very difficult to plan. That has now been made permanent. There's obviously a huge concern with the level of efficiency. 50% beyond ASHRAE for $1.80 a square foot seems difficult. I'll talk a little bit more when we get to the future thing, because there's been a new piece of legislation to increase that amount that's deductible and also reduce the amount you have to go beyond ASHRAE. So we'll get to that in a minute. The other thing that I think has been very important, and I think particularly for the organizations like BOMA or your other trade associations, is that the Paycheck Protection Program was not extended to 501c3 or C6 organizations. So BOMA, for example, BOMA International, but BOMA Jacksonville and BOMA Florida were not able to get assistance to try to offset some of those operational costs that were and payroll costs that were lost due to membership not being renewed. I mean, all of those issues around COVID. So in the bill for that was passed 133 over Christmas, those protections were extended. So I think the next big issue, and I know this is on everyone's mind, is what is in this legislation that just passed? How is that going to go forward? And there's some specific provisions in there that I think are very important, but there's a couple of nuances and then something to say about the past legislation. So one of the things that's come up when I've talked to a lot of people about this is, why did we need another one? There seems to be a lot of money left on the table from the last several, COVID bills that went through, whether it was block grants or whether it was a paycheck protection, because there's still money in those programs. But there were difficulties and they were not as streamlined and as easy to access. And so although people think that they could go back to the other programs, I mean, one thing I'd like to say is it's pretty much seen that those programs that were passed in those last two pieces of legislation, unless it's the actual forgiveness part on some of the loans that were made, it's probably going to shift all to this new American Rescue Plan. Now, the other thing that I want to say about this is that there's a very much different approach that the Biden administration has taken. And it doesn't really obvious on the surface, and it seems a little bit subtle, but it is a significant difference in that for paycheck protection and actually block grants to small businesses, you are not going to be going to the bank anymore and asking for that. You're going to be going directly to the government. So it's going to be the Small Business Administration, or it will be the Commerce Department, depending on what type of aid that you're looking for, the Department of Transportation, if it's a public transit relief. So whereas previously you had the bureaucracy to go through at the bank level and fill out loan paperwork and qualify and this and that, now it's going to be directly to the government. So without saying whether that's good or bad, who knows whose bureaucracy is better than the other. The one thing that is not going to be is based on the bank qualifying the loans and the programs. So what's actually in this bill? I think there's a lot of good in there that, depending on how the money is applied and if it can get to the right people, the $350 billion in state and local government aid, we viewed that as very significant and necessary, because overall what is happening is at the state or the municipal level, if the revenues are falling short, which again is questionable. I mean, I could talk to you a little bit about some studies that have been done that show that actually local revenue has not been declining, but has been holding steady, or if it's declining, it's by a very limited amount, like between 1% and 4%. But nonetheless, where we see a problem is that then the states, like particularly in California, just look to commercial real estate as we'll just raise their taxes and then we'll divert that money to fire and ambulance and police and other essential services that were used to be funded by tax revenue. So this money will be able to be applied directly to that. And our advocacy at the federal level will continue to be to have the federal government emphasize with the states that that money is to be used in lieu of raising taxes. Of course, you see the $1,400 direct stimulus payments to individuals. What we're really hoping there, and the reason we support that, is because we believe that getting people back to work, but making sure that they're not being evicted, and is important just as a general principle for our industry and association and our group. This next issue, the OSHA COVID protection standard, and we're expecting that to come out within the next few days. What this really does is this really directly relates to the question of liability. And I know later in your state update, you'll hear about the local liability policy. But what we're trying to achieve here is a guideline from the federal government that will provide some type of liability. In other words, usually when the federal government issues a guideline, I mean, think of the EPA and when they say, this is the regulation for discharge into a river. If the company follows that and can show that they follow those regulations for discharge, they're not going to be held liable for the pollution in the river, right? Because they've done what they were told to do. This is basically the same thing. We talk about reopening businesses. If the federal government will issue a COVID protection standard, how do you reopen? What kind of guidelines should be followed? I.e., should we all make hallways all in one direction? Do we have hand sanitizers available? Do we require masks or double masks? That will then provide the liability protection that we've been looking for, because obviously tenants and landlords and building owners are looked at as the deep pockets, and and people who get sick are, well, let's just sue these folks. Now, whether they're going to win or not isn't really relevant. We've still been sued, and we still have then legal issues and legal costs that we would have to do to defend ourselves. So we're very concerned about that. I've talked with OSHA, and we're starting to provide them, and we have provided them with some of the guidance documents that we've done on reopening. We're going to see this presentation on what this regulation is going to be, we think, within the next week or two, now that the legislation is passed, and we hope that it's going to be based on some of the information that we've given them, but certainly helpful to reopening. The 20 billion in public transit, it's an interesting concept that people keep asking me, well, why are we supporting that? But literally, we're trying to get our buildings reopened and people in them. And the way that we do that, particularly in city centers like Washington and New York, Los Angeles, even more than people would think, is by public transportation. And so making sure that people feel safe to come back to the buildings that we're trying to open on the way that they get to work is important. And then, again, small business grants. Now, these small business grants are actually quite important. There's a little bit of a change. Instead of just being only paycheck check protection, where we're using it to fund, to fund employee payrolls and keep people employed, this is going to allow, in these small business grants, it's going to allow for the use for overhead and other expenses, which basically means rent. We're very aware and have been working and trying to watch this issue of people who are on moratorium, people who have not been paying their rent, and landlords have not had really much recourse to deal with the issue. And with respect to small businesses, I mean, we're thinking about either lower floors of large commercial buildings, high rises, or just simply smaller buildings that have businesses in them, that these can be applied for, and then this money can be applied to pay for rents, which we think differs from paycheck check protection, and is incredibly important for reopening and moving forward. So that's sort of what we have been able to achieve so far. We think there's been a lot of success there, but I wanted to shift now and talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing in 2021. Obviously, we're going to continue to be working on COVID and reopening issues, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some vaccine and reopening law in a couple slides. But I wanted to talk about where BOMA is going in the future. And as you know, I've all been here, for I think it's 11 weeks now. And one of the things that I started to look at is in our federal policy, what are some of the issues that are important to members that maybe we haven't been covering enough. Of course, the last year has been, just taken up with COVID and all of this, different relief and information going out on that. But as we look to 2021 and the change in the administration, I think there's some significant issues that are going to rise that are going to impact us greatly. So without getting too much in the weeds about how our committees at BOMA are done, we've actually never had a committee called Legislative Affairs. And so one of the things that we've done is restructured our committees and taken our tax and finance task force and put it into a full-blown subcommittee called Energy Federal Legislative Policy. And within there, we're going to start covering 3 areas that I think are quite significant: energy and environment policy, tax policy, and workforce development. Basically, what I'm saying when we're talking about energy and environment policy is if we think about the new Green Deal and the new Democrats that have come into power in the Senate, and sort of this very aggressive push towards net energy buildings, towards national energy standards, that we need to start taking a very close look at that. And already in 2021, they have introduced 3 pieces of legislation. Well, 2 pieces. One is pending for next week that would establish national energy standards for all buildings. So the idea is either to take ICC, the IECC code, which is an energy efficiency code developed under an ANSI standard, but at this point is not necessarily mandatory. In some local jurisdictions it's been adopted, but it's not a federal standard. Or to take Energy Star as a benchmark, which is also difficult because, as I think many of you know, Energy Star, of course, is a benchmarked 50% above, 50% better. How do we come up with a standard? But nonetheless, apply that and then require all buildings over certain square footage to adopt that. So I don't know, what our view is 100% on this. There may be some parts of it that are good. There's certainly much of it that's problematic. So we need to start looking at that. This is not a tax policy, but this is really setting a national energy policy. The problems that arise for it, as I see, is that, they could take a look at Florida and say, well, the heating standard, right, that they're going to require is the same as the heating standard that they have in Minnesota, where you have -3 degrees. Obviously, it's very expensive to kind of meet those standards, and it's not relevant in Florida. It just doesn't make any sense. And so that's where we have concern, and we're really going to start working on that. On tax policy, we're going to continue that work. There's already 3 bills that have been introduced this year. Just really briefly, the Retail Revitalization Act, that actually allows real estate investment trusts to loan money to some of their small business tenants for them to pay rent and to maintain their businesses. Currently, under FEC guidelines and other, some other controlling law, there's a great limit to how much landlords can actually invest in their businesses. And so this would alleviate that. The Green Act, and this is what I wanted to talk about on ASHRAE. So we see the problem with that ASHRAE and anybody taking advantage of it, that 50% beyond a ASHRAE that was established 2 or 3 years ago is almost impossible to achieve. And even if it was, the $1.80 deduction is not the same. So the Green Act would actually change that deduction to $3 per square foot and lower the beyond ASHRAE number to 30%. So we're really pushing for that because we think that energy efficiency is a great thing, but in order to make sure that we can make these improvements in the building, we have to find a way to pay for them, and the technology has to be there to achieve it. I always say, great, we can say net energy buildings by 2025, but that doesn't mean we can get there, and it doesn't mean that it's a policy that anybody can achieve, and so therefore it doesn't mean anything. So we're really working on that. The Clean Start Act would again, is a reintroduction from one of the bills we did not get last year, which would allow up to $250,000 tax credit for cleaning processes and investments that were made in cleaning related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the one last thing I'd like to say about this is I started saying that like we're expanding this committee and the workforce development, but we're expanding this committee and we're looking for folks to participate. So if anybody finds that one of these areas is interest of their company or a personal interest, we would love to have you work with us as we advance these. The last thing I wanted to touch on here is as I've been here for 11 weeks, the thing that I keep hearing from everyone is we've got all these people in our industry retiring. We don't have anybody trained to come in and start taking these jobs. And what I mean by that is building engineers, elevator maintenance repair people, systems managers, all these kinds of things. There's really a system through VOTEC education for training these folks, workforce development. But I don't think that we have really done enough work in that area and to progress. And I used to work for the Air Conditioning Refrigeration Institute, and one of the things that we did a great deal of work on was getting HVAC people trained, but more importantly, getting them included in the federal legislation that funded these programs. So what I see is that building maintenance people would be listed right along HVAC people, plumbers, electricians, auto mechanics, as people that could take advantage of this federal funding and federal programs that train these folks so that we can start feeding them into the industry and address that issue that I keep hearing from all the members, that we don't have people to fill the roles properly trained. And, I've looked at our industry, we have a great story to tell. There's good jobs to be had. We just need to get the government and we need to get to support it, the education system to support it and get the message out. And we're really working in that way. And I know I was talking to Rick earlier, and part of it eventually as we begin to roll this out is going to be outreach to the community colleges that do this kind of training. And we would love to be part of that. We certainly at national level at BOMA International have the ability to write up presentations. If we ever get out of COVID, I'm happy to join folks where we can go out and talk about what a great career this is. So that again is more for the future. We're going to start working on that this coming year. And if anybody wants to work with us on it, I would love to have help in advancing that. Want to touch base now sort of on federal policy. And this is really the question. I put this up here and I added this just this morning because every time I talk to somebody, right, okay, so the next question that's coming up, which is going to be May 1st, when vaccines are supposed to be available and we're starting to have people come back into the buildings, is the question of, can we make vaccines mandatory? Is that something that we can do? And also, can we make people come back? Can we tell people they have to come back into the office? Can this be done? And, what I want to say to preface this is the answer to both is yes, but that really needs to be balanced against what it is kind of company culture that you're trying to achieve, what it is that, you want to do in terms of reopening. And I think what we're taking the stance at BOMA International is more that we should be finding ways to encourage people to want to come back. So, doing things like time off to take a vaccine, telework as needed. I know, for example, I had people in cubicles at BOMA International that we moved into empty offices to make them feel more comfortable. So I think that's the approach we're taking. But the question is, if the question is mandatory vaccines, it's absolutely yes. There are two key exceptions to this. One is the Title VII, which is the disability, disabilities and the American Disabilities Act, which basically says, look, if somebody can't take a vaccine for medical reasons, then they don't have to. And I think that's reasonable and everyone understands that. The other is the First Amendment issue. And that's basically based on religious objection. And again, this can't just be a it's against my religion, but it has to be a bona fide, documented religious, objection to it. And I think the best way to explain it is, I think the Seventh-day Adventists, or the scientists, right, that they actually don't see doctors at all. And so those folks would be exempt from it. The basis for mandatory vaccinations actually comes out of the CDC in the SARS H1N1 crisis, where the government actually passed regulatory guidance that says that in times of pandemic or flu, that vaccines can be mandatory. So on the issue of mandatory attendance, the answer again is yes, you can tell people they have to come back. But again, is that the kind of creation, what you want to create? I think that there's an easier and better pathway of encouraging people to do it. And I also want to be very careful because it's subject to local law. Every city and apparently every county has a different viewpoint on it. I live in Maryland. Our governor last week opened up the entire state, and then we immediately got a notice from the county that I live in, and said, that was nice that the governor said that, but we're not doing that. And so the restaurants remained closed and whatnot. And those violations of local law are the same as violations of state law. So we need to be careful. And then I want to say vaccine availability is a factor. How we're looking at really when this pandemic is over. And this is some discussions that we've had at Homeland Security level, and then some legal discussions, is that really when the vaccine is widely available to everyone, which means you could just walk into CVS or the Publix and get a vaccine, 30 days after that, because the way, if it's the two-thing vaccine, it's usually like 20 days and then it's another 15 days. So before it's fully efficacy has been reached in the vaccine, that is the day that you can actually tell people to come back and not have to worry as much about liability, because people are freely and widely vaccinated and we should be able to reopen. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, and just, kind of some of the things that BOMA International has been doing, and just remind everybody that all of these items are available on our website. All of our guidance documents, what you need to know, preparedness checklist. There's preparedness for building reentry, guidelines for industrial properties, emergency evacuations. That one's sort of an interesting one, because what that was really talking about was, if we're doing a fire drill and we're in the middle of a pandemic, how do we address the issue of trying to put everybody, in a stairwell? It's interesting. So those are all available on the website, and I would ask everyone to look within the next 3 or 4 weeks for an update to all of this material, because as I said, like with the vaccine stuff, I think by May we're going to be asking different questions, and we're right now in the process of either updating or creating new documents that address those new that address all of those new questions that are being asked. So some of the things that we've done on the state and local level, we have successfully lobbied to get the CRE professionals, as essential personnel. And what has happened there is that you will see that the Homeland Security through CISA and through CDC have basically said building personnel are essential. They're in 1C. We've done some assistance to make sure that the states adopt that language. And if you are, if you're having issues with that, we encourage you to talk to myself or to Ken, who I think everybody knows. And we have that material available to send, to the government and to lobby and whatnot. We have, some information on the health screening mandates, more information on liability protection and vaccine prioritization. Again, this next slide, just sort of looking at the same thing. The one thing about liability protection, I know there's going to be more discussion about that later in Florida. We were not successful at getting that information added in the COVID-19 legislation on the federal level, just so everyone knows, with the change in party leadership, where the Republicans had a little bit more support of it. The Democrats have not. So it really looks now like it's going to be a state issue. I know you guys are working on it. 8 other states have actually passed it, and several other states have legislation that is very similar, actually very similar to the legislation that's been introduced in Florida. Other thing that we have for you, and is our BOMA policy briefs, and these are a little bit different than like the COVID documents because we're talking about climate policy, the animals in the workplace issue, e-scooters, and the micromobility trend. And I think the issue there, of course, is what do you do when you walk out of a building and someone's dropped 30 scooters? That information is there. What I know that Ken is working on is looking at new areas where we're doing policy briefs, and we would encourage you guys to always contact us and say, hey, we've noticed that this is a big problem that's just come up or is just starting, and we'd like to find out what we could do about it. And we'll jump right in and start doing the research and creating the brief and the information on whatever that issue is. So we always like to hear about problems that are coming from the local associations, because that's how we get our marching orders on what to work on. And I think, if I could direct anybody, we just did a climate policy brief that we updated. What we tried to do this time is to include also links, a larger document that had links to every state's pending climate change legislation and how that fit into the bigger picture. So I hope that was helpful, and you can find that again on boma.org. So I just wanted to also, talk a little bit about the Industry Defense Fund. I know it's funded by our members. In California, we've been successful in this, what was called the split roll tax. What they were really trying to do there was to modify the state legislation so that they could, I think in some cases, quadruple the tax on commercial real estate. We felt that was a bad precedent to set, and they were very successful in defeating that. The COVID-19 protections and pandemic risk insurance, we used some of this money to do studies on that so that we could make some of these documents that we had given out. And then in BOMA, Chicago and suburban Chicago, there was a ratepayer class action where commercial real estate had been erroneously overcharged. And that we don't have time for that. It's a very interesting story. The state legislature was accepting bribes from Exelon, and then they all admitted to it, but then they didn't want to give back the money that they overcharged to the real estate, commercial real estate customers. And so there was a lawsuit, and that's now going forward. We felt that was very important because Exelon and Edison are national companies, and we believe that there may be some similar activities in other states. And so it's one of the reasons why I bring it up. But I think also just in general, to make sure that everyone knows that we have this Industry Defense Fund, and you can contact, have your leadership contact Ken at BOMA International. And we're here to help with those kinds of issues that maybe be overwhelming for the local association where there's funding needed to defend commercial real estate owners and managers of buildings. So we encourage you to do that. And then the BOMA PAC. So the first thing I want to say is, yay, thank you guys for selling and contributing to BOMA PAC and wearing your BOMA masks. And also during our winter business meeting, the support that we got from across the state of Florida was fantastic. So, our contributions have been 38,000 for last year. Revenue was 60,000 for last year, which we had targeted 100,000, but we were in the middle of COVID, so no events. But so far this year, we have already raised almost $25,000. So we're really in good shape to enter into this new election cycle, which we think is important. Things that I had talked about, like dealing with national energy policy, where they're going to set these national standards. This is what BOMA PAC does. We are able to donate and to cultivate relationships with those people who support us on those issues. So it is just amazing support that we've gotten, but I can't say how important it is that we continue to support it. And if you haven't bought your BOMA Jacksonville mask yet, I ask you on behalf of BOMA Jacksonville to please do that. The one last thing I'll do, because Meg, I think many of you know Meg Novak, who is our PAC manager and works on a lot of other issues. She's been doing a winter fundraiser. Usually we just do this during the winter business meeting, but we're keeping it open until the end of March. And you can buy a mask, a sweatshirt, or a BOMA zip up. Just go to boma.org/BOMAPAC, and you can do it right on there and order. Particularly, I would say order a t-shirt. I'll go ahead and give it to BOMA Jacksonville. Buy your mask from BOMA Jacksonville, but if you need a sweatshirt, because it's so cold in Florida, please buy one from us. And I'm giving you a little bit of a hard time there because it's going to snow here later today. So I'm quite jealous. Now, the last thing I just wanted to remind everybody is that at this point right now, we are planning on having our meeting in Boston. We're very excited about it. It's 18 to the 21st. We'd love to see anybody that can be there. Obviously, more information is at boma.org. You know, we've taken all the precautions, the social distancing, all of the safety issues. We think it's going to be a great conference, and we would love to see anybody there that can make it. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our president and our chair. And I think that stops the share, right? At least we got that part right. So thank you very much. And Melanie, I think it's back to you, right?
All right, well, thank you, Don. Now I'm going to turn it over to Chris to give you an update on the state advocacy issues. Chris?
Great. Thank you, Melanie. And Don, thank you very much for that presentation. A lot of information out there. You are right. BOMA Florida has utilized the IDF funds over the years, and it's a huge benefit that BOMA International offers to the locals for that. And it is an important part of our contributions to you guys. And yeah, I'll also throw you under the bus here because BOMA Jacksonville just had the TPC there this past 4 days from Thursday to Sunday. What a great event over there with the PGA. And they had beautiful weather, so no snow, no sleet, no rain.
Right.
Well, thank you, everyone. Let's see, there are a couple of issues that BOMA Florida has been following through our lobbyist, Lee Moffitt. And the first big one has been what they refer to as taxes and fees on remote sales. We refer to it as like online sales tax. And as you know, Florida is one of 2 states that do not require out-of-state online retailers to collect and remit the sales tax for online purchases. The potential fix to this sales tax, this is a potential fix to the sales tax issue on the commercial real estate lease rents and taxes on that. Currently, they're set at, here locally, it's 7%. Believe it's 5.5% for the state tax on that. And we have to contribute that monthly to the state of Florida. That sales tax on lease rents, it has a numerous effects, negative effects on job creation. It slows down economic development. Some say it's a double taxation. And over the years, we have battled this. We have had a 0.5% dropped off, I believe, in the past 6 years now. So this is an ongoing issue, but the online sales tax can be related and a relief for that lease tax payments that we have to collect on the state's behalf. So that is through the Senate. It's Senate Bill 50, that's 5-0. It has advanced quickly through the Senate. It has gone through Commerce and Tourism with 11-0 favorable vote. Finance and Tax Committee passed it 18-0. And the Appropriations Committee favorably passed it 8-0. So the last action on it was that it had a second reading and it was placed on a special order calendar. That means that it will be situated on a particular day and taken up on the session floor. As of this morning, though, no date has been set for that. A comparable bill, a similar bill on the House side is House Bill 15, that's HB 15. In Boma, Florida, this is a bill that Boma, Florida just started kicking out yesterday, and requesting our local members to reach out to the Speaker of the House, as well as members of the House and Ways Committee. The bill was passed favorably by the Ways and Means Committee, and it's been laid on the table, which means that they will most likely take the substitute and pass the Senate bill as a version of theirs. So those are a couple related to the sales tax issue that we have. The other issue is the liability insurance regarding COVID, and if there's any type of liability associated with commercial property owners. There were a couple of different scenarios going on with that. House Bill number 7, as well as Senate Bill 72. Yesterday, the Senate bill was CS by the rules, committee substitute by the rules. It was a favorable vote, 10-5, and it was placed on a special calendar. This one was actually put out there for a couple days from now on March 18th. And then the House bill, it is progressed favorably through multiple committees. The Civil Justice and Property Rights Subcommittee passed it favorably 11-6. The Judiciary Committee passed it favorably as a committee substitute. And then the House floor on March the 5th passed it 83-31 for the committee substitute. So it looks like they'll probably go with the Senate bill on that. But that brings up the importance of emails that your BAE would be distributing to your local members. Keep an eye out for email communication that way, because we do need everybody's individual support to be able to generate emails to your local constituents in Tallahassee during this legislative session, whether it's where you live or where your actually office is and you're employed. That is key to a successful legislative session on behalf of building owners and managers. And that's all that I've got.
All right, thank you, Chris. Does anyone have any questions for Don or Chris while we have the experts in advocacy here with us?
Actually, in the chat room, Rachel had a question. Rachel, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. So I was curious, Don, you mentioned that there was that REITs were allowed to give loans to their tenants. Is there a cap on the interest rate or prime plus that they would be held to on that?
There was not, and I think they were just direct loans, and the legislation itself. So the cap that I read in the legislation that I've read currently is that they are allowed to make loans, but they're very limited, and I think they're like 15% of what the annual rent rate is. The new legislation would allow that to be significantly more, and I think it's at 65%. I did not read anything in the legislation that talked about specific caps on interest rates and rate of return and that kind of thing. But I will actually get back to you on that. I'll have Emily look it up and we'll take a look. I think what the legislation says, which is typical, is, okay, we've established this and now we're going to send it over to Treasury to implement it, and they're the ones that are going to come up with it.
Very good. Thank you so much.
All right, any other questions?
I had a question on how much is the surprise, well, not a surprise, everybody knew what's going to happen, but it very quietly has rolled out with the increase of state unemployment insurance by almost 1%. In an industry like mine where single digit profit that 1% is a very big deal. So that is now going to have to be rolled back out into the buildings and into our invoicing on the janitorial side. So now we're looking at a state unemployment increase of 1%, a minimum wage increase of upwards of 20%, raising almost 65% over the next 4 years. I mean, how much is that being talked about in all of the industry? Because this is going to be huge impact. I mean, we're talking about going from 05 cents to 09 cents, and now this unemployment thing. Do you think that 1% is going to stay right there? Do you think it's going to get worse? How is that going to hit the next few years? Good question, right?
Is that for me or? So what I would say on the unemployment issue is that those things are funded at the state level, and that's a state unemployment tax. So I'm not sure. I don't have an answer for you on that. What I know is that the federal government only steps in on unemployment when they're trying to exceed what generally the state mandates are for 6 months of unemployment or whatnot. So we don't have an answer for you on that. I will say one of the issues that we're looking at, and this has been happening a great deal in Los Angeles, for example, is this hero pay. And the local city council or whatnot is mandating that you pay certain employees $5 an hour more immediately. This is happening in Chicago as well. I think in general we're taking a stance that that's probably not the way to go. We're opposed to it. The problem there, of course, and I don't know if this is your business directly, but you have collective bargaining issues, in some unions, right? That they've already have contracts, right, that are setting wages, right? So how do you just ignore all of that? And then particularly with grocery stores, I understand that the low margin. In California, they're closing grocery stores because they were underperforming stores. And when you actually increase that $5 an hour for everybody, it puts the store completely, in the red, and they just close it, right? So I think those are the kinds of things that we're looking at in terms of all of these increased costs. And we're certainly going to be making those arguments at the federal level as we can with the Biden administration as they go forward. I mean, I think those are some of the problems also with the federal minimum wage increasing, is that are you putting everybody out of business?
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, I'm gonna share my screen again with you guys and wrap this up. Our next month's speaker series is on homelessness in downtown Jacksonville. So please join us on April 20th to learn more about that. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I am super excited about this event. It's our first social event of the year on April 15th. We're hosting a virtual mixology class. You don't want to miss it. Please check out our website to sign up and for more information. There are also sponsorship opportunities available. So I look forward to seeing you there and sharing some cocktails. All right, we do have our golf tournament coming up May 7th. So again, please check our website for more information on that. And mark your calendars for our clay shoot on October 14th. I know we have a ways out, but it'll be here before you know it. And we do have a full list of events for the year scheduled, so check them out on our website. And as we close out today, I want to let everyone know that Rick's going to be sending out invites for these events so that they're on your calendar and you can't miss them. Don't forget to like us on Facebook as always, and thank you guys for attending today. I can't wait to see you at the coffee talk next week, the mixology class, education event in April on roofing, and our next speaker series on homelessness on April 20th. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Good day, y'all.
Thank
Have
you.
a great week.
Yes, you too.
Bye.
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 Chris. Thanks, Don.